Welcome to the Saturday edition of JLR Sports Betting and Daily Fantasy. It is February the 20th. This is Joe Jocelevich alongside my two colleagues today, Lenny Martin and TJ Rowley. Guys, how we doing today?
Doing good, man. Saturday. It's not snowing out down here in Philly, so good start.
Yeah, for a good Saturday, a lot of college ball on today. You know what I mean? Have the TV on and get some cocoa and enjoy some bets.
You gonna throw any alcohol in that cocoa?
I got a little Bailey's up top.
Throw a little Bailey's in there, yeah.
There you go. Give yourself a little bit of extra juice for those games. But yeah, like you said, we got a huge college basketball slate today. We do have some NBA later, but we're going to focus in on the college aspect of today. And again, we're coming in. Unfortunately, our streak ended last night, but we're coming in looking to start a new streak, and that all starts today. And with that said, we're going to dive right into it. We're going to go to TJ with a parlay, and I'm going to let him go over it. So it's all yours, T. Take the floor.
Awesome, Joe. Thanks. So yeah, as Joe mentioned, for today's college basketball slate, we're throwing in a 5-team parlay. I think there's a lot of great games on today. These 5 in particular stuck out, although when we get to my last one, we'll talk about maybe some alternatives that you can look into there if you're not feeling too confident with it. But first and foremost, I think the first game we want to touch on, just to get it out of the way, a little bit of a homer pick here. We have the Nova UConn game. I don't know if you guys can see, rocking my UConn gear over here. I have a UConn +7. This opened up at +8, which I was a little caught off guard by. I mean, I guess Nova is the cream of the crop in the Big East. UConn over the past few years has been struggling. They have a new coach. They've been getting more talent coming into the program. This year, they've definitely turned the corner. I think it's down to -6.5 now that you can even get it, which I would still hit. And then even if you want to get a little ballsy, you can even pick the money line, which I think was at +235. But again, UConn +7 was the pick that I was going with here. UConn's defense this year is one of the premier defenses. Their issue has been offense. In the past month and a half, they've been without James Bouknight, who's arguably all-conference, all-American type of talent. He came back last week where they put on a pretty good showing against Providence. They've been starting to click a little bit more in his absence. They had their second and third type scorers such as RJ Cole and Tyrese Martin coming in and stepping up. So I think now they've become a little bit more of a well-rounded team. I mean, as far as Nova, I mean, again, they've been playing great again this year. Just looking at some of the numbers, even though they had a pretty crushing loss against Creighton last week, I think about by 16 points. They are 5-1 against the spread after against the spread loss. However, I did notice that they have lost half of their home games against the spread. So again, do I want UConn to win? Yes. Do I think they can win? Absolutely. But to me, +7 is screaming out at me. The one thing I'm a little caught off guard by is what the books opened up at +8. Obviously the sharps at Vegas, they know what they're doing, right? So that is a little concerning, but I think this is going to be a really competitive game, and hopefully UConn wins. But I think the +7 should be something we can easily cover there. The next guy that we have here is Virginia at Duke. I have Virginia at -1. Listen, Duke hasn't been playing too great this year compared to what we normally see out of them. They have picked it up a little bit over the past couple games, winning the last 2 in convincing fashion over NC State and Wake Forest. Again, it is at home, which they're generally a pretty confident pick with. But Virginia Tech, as we all know, is an elite defense. Duke hasn't played that type of defense in conference play yet thus far. I think their pack line defense is going to limit Duke's ability to drive to the basket. So they are going to rely on the 3-point shots. Outside one player, Matthew Hurt, who shoots about 40% from 3, they just don't have the shooters. So I do think that, combined with the loss of Jalen Johnson, which we've seen in the news recently opting out, I think it's going to be a little bit difficult for Duke here in this game. And then again, not only the Cavs defense, but they do have the second most efficient offense in the ACC. So at -1, I think this is a pretty easy pick from my standpoint. So definitely lock that one in. Let's see. The third guy that we have here, another one as far as confidence level is pretty high. It's Illinois at Minnesota, and I'm going with Illinois at -5.5. Now on the screen, you can see that it has gone down a little bit to 4.5. So again, if you're favoring Illinois, you're getting that extra point here. So that should definitely up the confidence if needed. When we look at Illinois' stats, they've won 6 in a row. The previous matchup against Minnesota was one-sided. They blew them out by 27 points. Minnesota does need this one to stay competitive when we talk about the tourney. They've just struggled mightily on the road. And when you look at it, breaking down the best players on the floor, Illinois has the 2 best players, without a doubt, with Kofi and Ayo. So while the latter had struggled the last game against Northwestern, I do think he's going to pick up the pace here against Marcus Carr in Minnesota. And, Illinois -5.5, I think even 4.5, as we talked about, is going to be an easy pick there. So lock that one in as well. The next one I have is Arizona at USC. I took a USC at -7.5. Again, as you can see here, we have pulled it down a little bit to -6 if needed. Another one, Arizona's slumping pretty hard. I think there really isn't, a lot of ambition with the team at this point. They've lost 4 out of the last 5. Things are going downhill pretty quickly here. They've struggled against some of the better Pac-12 teams recently. And USC at this point is the cream of the crop of the conference. Again, Arizona struggles to score. I think it's just going to be pretty troublesome for them to put some points on the board. On the flip side, USC is on a roll. They've won 7 in a row. They've covered the last 6. They've had 1 loss all season at home. And, when we talked about Illinois and Minnesota previous games, same for USC and Arizona. They beat Arizona on the road by 14 points earlier in the year. So when I look at this matchup, I just don't think Zona can score enough. I don't think they have the size to contain the Mobley brothers on USC. So lock in USC -7.5 or -6 if you need to go that low. And then the last guy that I have here, as I touched on a little earlier, been going back and forth on, but we're still going to lock it in. I have Louisville at +5.5. Both teams need to bolster their shaky tourney resume. I mean, they're both, I think, right now looking to be in, but they're both on thin ice, so they need to rack up a couple wins here. My issue with Louisville, as we start to look at getting closer to the game here, is they've only played twice this month. They've been plagued by COVID all season. Even for this game, they're going to be missing some players potentially. Their coach even was out with COVID as of the past couple of weeks, so he had to turn over the reins to the assistant coaches for practices. So they've been struggling a bit. UNC, again, they haven't had their typical year like we talked about with Duke. Only 2 games over 500 in the conference. They are undefeated at home. So again, I'm really kind of hitting this on the spread, not necessarily thinking Louisville can come in and pull the upset. I will say, if you're wanting to go with something as far as like an alternative bet on this game, I was looking at the under, which I think is 140 right now. Both teams have a tendency to go cold on offense. So I do think it's going to be the first team to 60, to be honest with you. I think UNC wins again, but I think it's going to be a close, grinded out game, definitely a rock fight. So I think Louisville could get the backdoor cover here at the +5.5. So we're going to lock that one in still. And then, although we have 5 here, I'm just going to throw out a 6th one just as a bonus if you guys are interested in it. I have Georgia Tech Miami at -3. This is another one where I'm trying to pick on some teams here that haven't really been playing as much recently. So although I'm going with Louisville on the flip side from the previous game, this one I'm actually going against Miami. They played once in the last 2 weeks. They're going to have 7 scholarship players only, which does not include their 2nd and 5th leading scorer. Even at full strength, they've just been miserable this year. They've only won 1 game since January 16th, and that was against Duke, who, again, isn't even a tourney team at this point. So on the flip side, Georgia Tech, they're fighting for a tourney berth. They're 6-6 in the conference. I think at -3, that should be a pretty good game to pick on if you're looking for an alternative. So yeah, that's going to be my 6 picks, but I'm going to pass it over to Joe at this point, and he's going to go through his parlay. Thanks.
No, thanks, Steve. That looks great on paper, and it always does, doesn't it? And then, then they tip the ball off, and then God knows what can happen. But hey, on paper, that looks like a winner to me. Just quickly before I get into my parlay, there's a huge game on tomorrow. Usually there's no like big college games on tomorrow. There's a really big one, Ohio State and Michigan. And first thing you're thinking is football, with those 2 schools. But that's going to be a really good game. I think that tips at noon, so that's going to be interesting to watch. That'll be a good watch tomorrow because I expect that game to be close. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I was looking at that game and I brought up the TJ last night, you know what I mean? And, that's probably the game of the week. And, I believe we both agreed that Michigan, should be able to take that one. And, playing at home, they finally came off that skid with the COVID and they're starting to get into the groove of things. So I think Michigan at home, I think the spread's like 1.5, 2. So I think Michigan should be able to take that home victory and get a nice little notch in their belt.
Funny how we're breaking in Ohio State for basketball, because considering we hate both football teams. So
Amen.
We're actually, to talk like sensible about Ohio State and Michigan kind of feels weird, but it's basketball, so we could.
Yeah, I'll just touch on that really quickly, Joe. I agree. Like I said, Lenny and I talked about it briefly last night. I think, to me, this is actually an easy pick. I think Michigan all the way. I mean, Ohio State is a great team. They're all around team. I don't think they have any rock star type of talents, that can carry them all the way to the championship, but they're a steady, efficient team. I do think their ranking thus far is a little bit of a byproduct of the Big Ten Conference being looked at as a pretty tough and, overall difficult conference. So, I do think they get a little bit of that. As Len touched on, Michigan at home. My concern with Michigan, even last week when they played Wisconsin, was they had a COVID layoff. How are they going to come out? They started off slow, and then they picked it up and finished the game off against Wisconsin. So I think that was going to be one time that you could have caught Michigan slipping. Now that they've gotten back into play, I think it'll be competitive, but I think towards the end, Michigan should take that.
As we stand here today, who wins the NCAA tournament this year?
I think, you'd have to be lying to yourself right now if you didn't look at the field and say Gonzaga and Baylor are head and shoulders above everybody. But to be honest with you, after that, I think it's a crapshoot. And as you guys know, right, once you can kind of get the momentum going in March, you can get a team coming out of the blue. And as I said, like being a UConn fan, they've had a couple of years where, they were okay in the conference during the season. They brought it together during the tournament and, they looked unstoppable. So, I do think it is going to be one of those years, especially with COVID, right? We don't know if we're even going to be guaranteed games. Even if a team wins, what happens if they get COVID, right? So that's going to be interesting, like how the tournament plays out. But, right now, Gonzaga and Baylor, and I would probably say, Gonzaga has just been unbelievable. It would have been awesome to have that game earlier this year if it wasn't canceled. It would have been a nice glimpse of the potential championship game, but I think those are the top two.
Yeah, if you're going back to one thing that TJ talked about earlier, for his parlay, if you look on to the right, if you take his parlay and if you put like $10 on it, is to win $229. You put 20 on it, now you're talking about a $458 winner. So the odds on there are plus 21.93. So any money on there, 5, 10, 15, 20, is a big cash day. So if you want to put in TJ's look, it looks pretty good on paper, and it's a nice little cash pay there. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And with that said, and I agree 100%, Gonzaga and Baylor, I wish they would have played because they were scheduled to play each other and it just got postponed because of COVID. But I think it's going to be hard to beat Gonzaga. I watched them play Virginia, who has a stout defense, and they destroyed them. Florida State just destroyed Virginia as well. But Gonzaga passes the eye test head and shoulders above the rest right now anyway. We're going to dip into my parlay. I got a 5-teamer. I'm going to start with something similar to what he had. It's Virginia and Duke. I'm going to attack that game. I have Virginia on the money line. He took it -1, I believe. No Jalen Johnson. You're looking at third leading scorer and second leading rebounder for Duke. Virginia, like I said, they have a lockdown defense, and they're looking to bounce back. Just that embarrassment against Florida State. So even though I believe it's on the road, I still like Virginia to throw the clamps down in this game and win pretty convincingly. Second game we're going to move on to here is the West Virginia Texas game, and we're going to go with the over. And I believe I have it at 141.5. Yeah, I have it plugged in for 141.5. West Virginia scores 78 points per game. They have 4 players that are in double figures right now. Texas, in the last 11 games, 9 out of their last 11 tilted to the over. I like this game to be up and down the floor. I think it was a 1-possession game the last time these guys played each other. It wouldn't surprise me if West Virginia picked out a win, but I think the better play here is the over 141 because I think there's going to be points to be had in this game. So I'm leaning on the over 141. And again, I teased that down because I believe that was 149. So I took it comfortably at 141. Next game we're going to dive into is LSU and Auburn. It's 2 teams going in totally different directions. LSU is upper echelon of the SEC right now. They're fighting for that 3rd spot for the conference tournament. Obviously, I think Alabama is going to clinch the 1, but I mean, number 2 and 3, that's going to be a dogfight. Auburn, on the other hand, Cooper came back, and that they're stud. These are like diaper dandy freshmen, but again, I felt, and I said it once on the podcast, I'll say it again, your diaper dandy teams, your Dukes, your Kentuckys, your Michigan States are struggling this year because they didn't have any time to gel, the COVID, and your teams that have more seniors and upperclassmen are the teams that are really powering through this year. So I can't say that I'm too brokenhearted for the Dukes and the Michigan States that have these one-offs because, so sorry. But at the other aspect of this is, again, to go back to the LSU game, is I think these 2 teams are going in different directions. I know Cooper, I don't know if he enters the draft, but I just don't think he'll have enough today to power Auburn past LSU. LSU just beat Tennessee pretty handily. Tennessee's a pretty good defensive team. They're top almost in the SEC. So yeah, LSU feels like a safe play today. So we went there. And that's all about positioning as well, like I said. So they're trying to position themselves for a good seed with the SEC tournament coming around and also with the big dance. So, I mean, they want to make some noise. And like he said, I mean, you have Baylor, you have Gonzaga, and then you have everybody else after that. So it's anybody's race. The next game we're going to go to here is BYU in Loyola Marymount. I'm going to go with BYU here. BYU is clearly the second best team in the WCC. They have a 16-5 record. For Loyola, they're missing Eli Scott. He is their stud. He's averaging 17.5 points with 8.2 rebounds per game. I'm kind of going against the grain here because, I mean, Marymount, they're coming in on a 4-game winning streak. They're playing good basketball. They also have the number 1 defense in the conference. They're only giving up 65 points a game. But I think having Scott out takes the production away. I mean, they're really going to have to throw down the clamps today, and I just think BYU is a better team. So I'm going to roll the dice and go BYU today. The next game we're going to look at is Florida State and Pitt. Florida State's is playing good basketball right now. Like I said, they went out and they annihilated Virginia, and Virginia has a solid defense. Pittsburgh has nobody that could play the defense, the caliber defense that Virginia played. This game's on the road, but that doesn't bother me either. It's all about momentum, and I think Florida State's going to start getting hot. I mean, at the right time. They have studs. They're athletic as all hell. I mean, they would have been a Final Four team, I think, last year if they played it last year. I mean, they had the capability. So I expect them. This is their time to start making a run. You're going to find out the cream of the crop, with your teams. Obviously, we go back. We got Gonzaga and Baylor, but you're going to see teams now start picking it up and getting hot at the right time. And I like Florida State. Like I said, just too many athletes, too many problems for Pitt. So that's going to conclude my parlay 5-teamer. I believe I put 10 on it. What do we got there on the side? 10 to win what?
So looking, and you put the 20% profit boost on that as well. So if you go on DraftKings, you get a 20% boost on the four-legger. $10 is to win 86.34. So it's a nice little chunk of change for a good Saturday warm up. And I mean, between both bets, you put both bets in, and you potentially put 10 on each. You're talking about over 350 bucks. So yeah, like everything we say, it looks good on paper, but you got to go out there and play the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, is that a Missouri pick in there?
Yeah, you have Missouri at South Carolina. You took Missouri straight up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you did. Let me go over that quickly. South Carolina is they're not a top team. Missouri came in to the season. They were playing good basketball, but then one of their studs went down. He has returned, and I think that's going to be the difference and to get Missouri back on track. I expect Missouri to score a lot today on the poor South Carolina defense. And again, it's about getting back in the winning column for Missouri, and I think they do that today. So.
Yeah, Joe, and I was going to say that Missouri pick I like. I was actually looking at that with the spread, which I think was -3.
Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I keep saying get right game for Missouri here. They've been struggling a little bit, but they're a pretty great team. I mean, when we talk about in comparison to the rest of the field this year, I mean, again, they're not that top tier like we talked about, but I mean, they're going to be potentially fighting for a top 4 seed. South Carolina is injury riddled. I think Missouri just puts too many points on the board. So I do like that pick.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, I mean that would be my portion into my parlay. What do you have to add in here?
Yeah, I know. I mean, looking at both picks, I mean, I really like Illinois. What TJ said before, they're playing pretty good. And Virginia, I've been watching them for the last week or two, and their defense hasn't stepped up as we saw. They gave up a bunch of points, what Joe said, to Florida State, but they're playing Duke now. It's a different breed. Duke is not who they used to be. So I like Virginia pick that you both have, and even with the Louisville, I know Louisville earlier in their year, got Joe on a better too, but they're playing North Carolina, and yet again, North Carolina is not who they used to be. So there's a lot of solid picks here. I mean, I'm high on Florida State over Pittsburgh as well, just because I saw what they could do to Virginia, and Pittsburgh's not even anywhere close to Virginia. So I think there's a lot of solid games on here, a lot of good parlays, and hopefully if everyone plays it, you win a nice chunk of change here.
Yeah. And I'll just touch on something too, Lynn, that you made a comment on. So Joe's using the profit boost. That 5-team parlay that I have, I actually threw up on FanDuel. I know, again, this was something else we talked about briefly last night. One thing that you'll notice when you talk about which site you prefer is, while DraftKings does offer some of these profit boosts, you on the flip side, you have FanDuel, which generally speaking, you're going to get the lines coming out a little early. So that will normally then you'd see from DraftKings, right? So, once I saw the UConn line, I wanted to jump on it rather quickly. I went to DraftKings, it wasn't there. You go on FanDuel, it was there. So I tried to hammer that as quickly as I could. There's pros and cons to both sites. Again, FanDuel, you get the parlay insurance as well. So, keep that in mind when you're putting your bets in. If you're really, feeling your picks, you're willing to kind of wait until that day of with DraftKings where they normally throw the games out. You can still get that profit boost to get punched in, but if you're really liking a spread, definitely keep in mind that FanDuel will typically have that posted a little earlier. So, just something to consider when you proceed to do these bets on the various sites.
I want to throw out, I mean, we talk about FanDuel, we talk about DraftKings. My favorite book by far is MGM. I love MGM. They have all the lines out. They're the first ones to hit the lines. I mean, they come quicker than FanDuel sometimes, and their bonuses are really good. Like they just sent me 50% profit on $1,000. So I deposited $1,000. I got $500 to play with one-time playthrough. So I cashed out almost $500 of their money on top of my $1,000. So I mean, that's $500 I didn't have in my pocket. They're definitely worth a look. I think it's like a combination between DraftKings and FanDuel just put together. I mean, definitely worth a look. Obviously, my favorite book come football season, it's not even close. That's going to be Rivers. I mean, 50% profit boost on parlays. I mean, you can't beat that. That's unmatched as of right now. But yeah, I mean, to what TJ said, you got to take advantage of your profit boosts when you do get them, and just got to peek around and see who has what out early. Some sites are earlier than others, and yeah, like I say, you just got to do your homework and do your diligence.
Yeah. And I guess I would say, just to summarize, right? Like, if you're going to put your bets in, just be efficient with where you're doing them and just take advantage of those promotions where you can, right? So, you're going to put that $10 bet down, you might as well put it down for a 30% boost on your parlay, right? You're only kind of, having a higher ceiling there. You still might lose the 10, but what's better, $50 or $75, so keep that in mind.
Absolutely. And I just want to say thank you guys for the support. We get a lot of feedback and a lot of good stories when we do hit bets from other people who played our content. So we do enjoy that. You can follow us at www.facebook.com/JLR.sportsbetting. Definitely hop on board. We put content out daily, and we try to get a video out. I know we've been really busy this week, but we try to get videos out daily. And we enjoy winning, but I mean, if we could win and then have people tell us, hey, we played your stuff, that's just all that more satisfying. So with that said, I'll kick it over to Len. You can wrap it up.
Yeah, like Joe was saying, we'll do the homework and you'll get the good grades, hopefully. So that's what we're looking for at the end of the day. So hopefully you play TJ's bet. Hopefully you play Joe's bet. Hopefully they both hit or one hits, make some money today. But they did their research. They gave us some good input, and we'll see what happens today. So, yet again, make sure you check out our Facebook page, and good luck with your bets today.